When someone mentions Snoop Dogg, cooking probably isn't the first thing that comes to mind. But after spending decades making some of the biggest hits and shaping the rap music culture, somewhere along the way he wrote a cookbook. The Boss Dog has put together 50 laid-back, no-stress recipes perfect for when your hunger hits. So today we've stepped into Snoop's kitchen to try a few of his go-to dishes. So let's drop this cookbook like it's hot and take a quick look at the book itself. Looking through the book, you can immediately see Snoop's personality everywhere. From the font used and the tone of the recipe stories to Snoop's top 5 charts, it feels less like a traditional cookbook and more like being invited into Snoop's kitchen. The recipes themselves are just as approachable as the book feels. The instructions are straightforward, written in that same laid-back style you'd expect from Snoop. The titles in the book are fun and playful. Each recipe has a clever or catchy name that makes you smile before you even start cooking. The pictures are simple, clean, and incredibly appetizing. You can almost taste the food through the page. The book covers everything from breakfast to dinner. Snoop even shares some of his go-to party recipes for when you need to feed a big crowd, like game night or a family gathering. And he even lets you in on some of his go-to drinks, perfect for when the kids are in bed and it's time to unwind. So it's time to step into Snoop's kitchen and cook a few meals, and see if they actually cure the munchies. Our first recipe from Snoop Dogg's cookbook is one of his signature comfort foods, the toasted Bologna sandwich. This recipe is straight from Snoop's childhood, made with whatever cold cuts he could find in the fridge, though Bologna was always his preferred choice. So let's get into it and see how young Snoop put it together. As we don't really have Bologna where we are, we went with the Aussie equivalent, Fritz. In a saucepan over medium heat, add in some butter and let it melt before adding 2 slices of white bread. Lightly toast them for about 2 minutes each side, or until you reach your desired level of toastiness. Remove the bread from the pan and spread a generous layer of yellow mustard on each slice, the yellower the better. Then using the same pan, add in your meat and cook about 2 minutes before flipping. Once flipped, place a slice of American cheese on each piece. Our cheese slices were a bit too big for our Fritz slices, so we ended up cutting the cheese into quarters. Once your cheese is placed on top of your meat, cook for another 2 minutes or until the cheese just starts to melt. Transfer your meat and cheese onto one of your pieces of bread, mustard side up. Then top it off with some of Snoop's favourite barbecue chips for a bit of crunch, before closing your sandwich with your last bit of bread, mustard side down. And there you have it, one of Snoop's classic childhood meals, perfect for a late night snack or a lazy afternoon lunch. And don't stop with just one toastie, make at least 3 because they're way too easy not to. That toasted Bologna sandwich was a perfect start. Simple, comforting and easy to make. But now it's time to step it up a bit and make something a little bit more fancier. Snoop's Down Under Lobster Thermidor. After first trying it in Australia while on tour, and not being able to find anything that tasted quite like it back home, the Boss Dog just made his own version, and after multiple tries, he found the unique flavour he was looking for. This recipe calls for one lobster weighing about 600 grams. We couldn't find one that big here, so instead we used 2 Western Australian rock lobsters. Ours came pre-cooked, but if you want to cook your own lobster from scratch, just bring a large pot of water to a boil, add your lobster to the pot, and cook it for about 10 minutes. It should end up looking bright red. Then transfer it straight into an ice bath to stop the meat from overcooking. With our lobster cooked, start by cutting it in half lengthwise, from head to tail. Try to get a nice straight cut as we need to use the shells later. Then carefully remove the meat and place it into a bowl. Remove and discard any innards and give the shells a good clean. Set those aside for later. Next, in a pan over medium heat, melt 55 grams of butter, add in 2 chopped shallots and 3 chopped garlic cloves, cooking for about 30 seconds until fragrant. Slowly sprinkle in 35 grams of flour, whisking constantly so it doesn't burn. Once all the flour is incorporated, cook it for about 2 minutes. Then add 1 teaspoon of mustard powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, and half a teaspoon of pepper. Pour in 80 milliliters of white wine, followed by 480 milliliters of cream, giving everything a good mix. Stir in 80 grams of shredded Gruyere cheese or something similar, along with 30 grams of grated Parmesan. Once the cheese has fully melted and the sauce is smooth, add the lobster meat and stir until everything is well coated. Place the clean lobster shells onto a baking tray and evenly spoon the mixture back into each shell. Finish with a sprinkle of crushed crackers on top, then place them under the grill until golden and bubbling. To finish, garnish with some freshly chopped green onion and parsley. And there you have it, Snoop's famous Down Under Lobster Thermidor. That Down Under lobster was a showstopper, and surprisingly easy to make at home. But now it's time to switch gears and finish on something a little sweet, the Rolls-Royce of peanut butter cookies. If you've got a sweet tooth like us, you don't want any regular peanut butter cookie, you want the best of the best, straight from the top dog himself. In a small bowl, add 210 grams of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and half a teaspoon of salt before giving everything a quick mix. Then in a larger bowl, add 220 grams of room temperature butter, 130 grams of creamy peanut butter, 100 grams of brown sugar, and 100 grams of white sugar. Give everything a good mix until smooth and well combined. Once that's mixed together, stir in 1 egg and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Then slowly mix in your dry ingredients, and then finish things off by folding in 360 grams of semi-sweet chocolate chips. Line a baking tray with baking paper and spoon on your dough. Each ball should be about the size of 1 tablespoon, spaced roughly 5 centimeters apart. You should end up with around 36 cookies in total. Bake in a preheated oven at 190 degrees Celsius for 10 minutes, rotating halfway through. Once they're out, let them cool before touching, because if you don't, they will fall apart. Just ask me how I know. If these Rolls-Royce peanut butter cookies don't get people talking, I don't know what will. Now that we've taken a look into Snoop's kitchen and cooked things from old school comfort food to dishes that are a bit fancier, it's time to find out if his cooking is just as good as his music. Starting with the Bologna sandwich. This might not look as impressive as some of the other dishes, but it hits hard. Everything works together perfectly. The saltiness of the frites, the tang of the mustard, all wrapped up in melted cheese. With the extra crunch from the chips, you just can't go wrong. It's not fancy at all, but that's the point. It's super simple, satisfying, and exactly the kind of sandwich you'd happily make again. You can absolutely see why Snoop included this recipe in his book. Now we're moving on to something a bit fancier, Snoop's Down Under Lobster Thermidor. This dish looks like something you'd find in a 5-star restaurant, and it tastes just as good as it looks. The lobster pairs perfectly with the creamy sauce, and the tanginess of the cheese and white wine complement each other without being overpowering. And the cracker on top adds a satisfying crunch that rounds everything out. Snoop definitely hit the nail on the head with this one. This was also our first time ever having lobster, and for anyone wondering, lobster tastes a lot like a prawn. So if you can't get yourself a lobster, try substituting it with some prawns. And finally, to finish, we've got the Rolls-Royce of peanut butter cookies, and these do not disappoint. They're crunchy and chocolatey. There was only a mild peanut butter flavour, but that could have come down to the brand of peanut butter we used. So make sure to use your favourite good quality peanut butter if you end up making these. But these cookies are sweet, satisfying and dangerous. You don't want to stop just at one. I can see why Snoop makes 36 at a time, as they only lasted a couple days in our house. And that wraps up our journey through Snoop's kitchen. So let's take one last look at Snoop's first cookbook. Overall, Snoop's From Crook to Cook is exactly where it promises to be. Fun, approachable and full of personality. We really liked how each recipe comes with its own story. It gives you a real glimpse into why he chose each dish and what makes it special to him. And you can't help but hear it in his voice as you read. There's a big focus on flavours, generous portions and foods that are meant to be enjoyed. Snoop's cookbook isn't full of fancy, over-the-top 5-star rated recipes, with the exception of 1 or 2. Instead, it leans into nostalgia, simplicity, and recipes that bring people together. There's even a whole drink section for when it's time to party, including Snoop's famous gin and juice. But you'll definitely need to like gin though, because gin is very much the main character in all the drink recipes except for one. As a cookbook, the instructions are simple and easy to follow, which makes it very approachable for everyone. We also really like that both imperial and metric measurements are included in every recipe. It's a small detail, but it makes a big difference and shows how user-friendly the book is. Where it does fall a little short is with the food photography. It feels like less than half the recipes include a finished photo, which might not be a deal breaker for everyone, but personally, we love seeing how delicious something is supposed to look before we even start cooking. That said, the strength of the recipes and the personality of the cookbook more than make up for it. Taking everything into account, the dishes, the style, and the overall vibe of the book, it's clear this book isn't just about making food, it's about enjoying it and having a good time. And if you're a Snoop fan or just looking for a cookbook that's entertaining, approachable, and produces some tasty results, then give this one a go. And if you've made any recipes from Snoop's cookbook, let us know in the comments which one was your favourite. Also, let us know what other cookbook or hobby books you want to see next. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and if you want to see more cookbook and hobby book reviews. Happy cooking and keep it real.